The NHL trade deadline is only 5 days away. In today's video, we're going to be discussing all the latest rumors, including a new one I just came across, discussing a potential 3-team trade between the Leafs, the Rangers, and possibly the Carolina Hurricanes. We got all the details, and we'll discuss all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Alright, so let's jump right into it. We have a lot to discuss today. A lot of these rumors are players we've discussed before, but a lot of them have a new twist on them. So we'll see what's going to go down. We also have some housekeeping things to take care of. There's been a few minor waiver claims and small deals made since our last video. So we'll take care of that stuff first, and then we'll get into some of the newer rumors, including that big three-way potential deal that I came across here earlier. We'll discuss that here momentarily, so stay with us for that. So first of all, a few quick things to take care of here. Last night we had a trade involving the Toronto Maple Leafs. They sent veteran forward Eric Fair to the San Jose Sharks for a 7th round pick. As most of you probably know, Fair's been playing in the minor leagues, so they were able to clear him off their books and move him over to the Sharks. Obviously the Sharks had been rumored to want some depth at center, so it should work out there. Obviously it's nice for the Leafs to get him off their books though. Not so much for the cap relief, because that's not really a big factor here, but more so for the number of contracts. They're only allowed to carry 50 contracts at a time. They were stuck at the 50 mark not long ago, but since they moved Soshnikov and now they moved Fair, so that brings them down to 48, gives them a little bit more flexibility if they wanted to add here before the deadline is up. And we do have some Toronto Maple Leaf trade rumors involved in this video, so if you're a Leaf fan, certainly stay tuned for that. We'll get into the potential players they may be looking at here momentarily, but first we'll finish the cleanup here on some of these housekeeping items. So we had a couple waiver claims as well. The Senators placed forward Gabriel Dumont on waivers, and he was picked up by Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously he went the other way earlier this year, where Tampa put him on waivers, and then the Senators picked him up. He did get into a decent number of games with the Senators, but really was a fourth line player who saw limited action. They've got all kinds of younger kids and prospects who can play that role. Like a Max McCormick, for example, that play a very similar style game. So it really didn't make sense for them to pick him up. I was quite surprised when they did. And obviously earlier we saw Tampa and Ottawa have exchanged players on waivers a couple times this year. So Dumont goes back to Tampa. We also saw another waiver claim. The Capitals put Chorney on waivers, and he was claimed by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Of course, Chorney had only really played 24 games, limited action this year with Washington. But then afterwards, the Capitals went out and they made a move with the Montreal Canadiens, picking up defenseman Jacob Jerabek. Going the other way was a 5th round pick in next year's NHL entry draft. So obviously the Capitals feel like Jerabek is an improvement over Chorney on defense. So obviously one kind of move led to the other. I'm assuming the other deal was probably imminent, just a matter of them making room on the roster for Jerabek to be brought in. So that about concludes the housekeeping items for some minor things that have gone down since the last video. So let's jump into the current rumors and things that need to be discussed today. As we mentioned through the title and what you've seen behind on the screen here, there's as many as 8 teams that we're going to discuss. Some of them are involved together, so let's jump right into it here. So obviously I've been hearing rumors on Nicholas Chalmerson of the Arizona Coyotes. I'm not 100% convinced that they're going to move him. I think they personally would like to retain him, but at the same time, in the position they're in, I think they need to look at all options. I'm not sure what the return would be, but one thing that surprised me was that one team looking at him was the Montreal Canadiens. Now, obviously Montreal could use help on defense. There's no doubt about that. It just seems like an odd time to be looking at that. Obviously, they're not going to be a playoff team, so it seems like a weird time for them to add. But if they can get a deal done for the right price, I guess there's never a bad time for that. But you would think it'd be more so contending teams looking to bulk up for the playoffs. And another team that's apparently interested in Chalmerson, but I think to a lesser extent, was the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know I've mentioned him before as a potential fit in Toronto, but to be honest, considering he's got term on his contract, I think the price tag might be too high. And I know that the Leafs, from what I see in these other rumors we're going to discuss, are examining the possibility of bringing in other defensemen, and I think some of these other guys might be more in line for what they're looking for. So I would say that there is some mild interest from Toronto on Chalmerson. I'm not convinced that he's even going to get moved. And I'm not convinced that either of these teams would be the landing spot, but apparently there's interest. Just because there's interest doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I've been reading a fair bit that those two teams are showing interest in Chalmerson. We'll see if it leads to anything. I have my doubts. So moving on here, we do have another potential trade that's getting close on Mike Green in Detroit. I've read that the Tampa Bay Lightning seem to be the favorite to pick him up, and from what I've been reading this morning, it seems like a deal is very, very close. I did see one source indicate that they had a conversation either through Green or with his agent, who indicated that he was asked, where he has a no trade clause, he has to be provided and grant permission to have a trade go through. And there was an offer that was presented to him, and it was close to being finalized. So we'll see. I'm not sure how imminent this deal is, but Green to Tampa is a real possibility. I know in the other video we did last night, we talked about the possibility of Tampa having interest in Erik Karlsson. As we mentioned in the video, I think it's something that Ottawa needs to consider all options. I do think it's a long shot it happens, and if a deal like that goes down, I would more so think that would happen in the summertime anyways. But if we do see Tampa pick up a decent contract defenseman like a Green, I think we can take those other rumors and certainly put them on the shelf at the very least until free agency kicks off this summer. So we'll see, but apparently from what I'm seeing, Green is close to going to Tampa, and I think that would certainly bulk up their defense for sure, and might be a good move depending on what the asking price is. I'm not sure what Detroit would get in return, but as we all know and discussed here in a few different times, Tampa has a ton of prospects, and I'm sure Detroit would be able to get something decent out of them in return for Mike Green. So moving on here, another couple of quick updates on some other guys. Obviously, we talked about Evander Kane a lot on this channel. There's been a ton of rumors really for months now on this guy. It's kind of surprising that he hasn't been moved, but I think the main reason is that the asking price is just too high. I think there's some of these big name top, especially the UFA guys, the price tags are really high, and until they start to come down, we're not going to see moves, and you're going to have to see a team kind of take the plunge on one player, and then you'll see the other dominoes follow suit once the market is kind of set. And for some of these guys, the market is not set yet, but I know from a lot of teams inquiring about picking players up, it seems like the asking price is just too high, and they're kind of trying to wait things out. But as far as Kane goes, I'm hearing St. Louis, San Jose, Columbus, and Carolina as possible teams that are showing interest in this guy. Carolina, as I mentioned, is a team that might be involved in that three-way deal that I was reading about earlier this morning. We'll see if there's much to it, and we'll get into the details of that here momentarily. But obviously with the new ownership in Carolina, I think they're really anxious to make a big splash and prove to the marketplace and the fans that they're all in and trying to make this team a winner, and that they're on the cusp of a potential playoff spot. They're in the mix, and I think they want to show the fans that they're in it to win it, and that they want to do some good things here to build this team up. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Hurricanes are involved in some kind of deal to get a decent name player here at the deadline to kind of hopefully secure themselves a nice playoff spot. Probably won't be any more than a wild card, but at this point, that's a step in the right direction for a team like Carolina. So obviously, we'll see what happens with Kane. There's not too much there, except for Columbus and Carolina are teams that really weren't mentioned too much before. I'm not sure personally. St. Louis, San Jose, I'm not sure about the Blues. They seem to be reluctant on rental players, but if they get desperate enough and they're getting to that point, then things could change with Doug Armstrong and company in St. Louis. So moving on here, another quick note. We talked a lot about the Predators wanting to bulk up one more time. Obviously, they've already done a big deal this year and added some players, but it looks like they're showing a lot of interest in Thomas Tatar out of Detroit. Obviously, that's a player that would probably fit in well with their top 6, top 9. And probably would come at a lower price tag than some of the other players that have been rumored to possibly be going to Nashville. So Tatar, I know Nashville and Detroit, doesn't mean a deal's going down, but they have been scouting each other quite extensively. So we'll see what happens, but it has been rumored that they're having a really close eye on Tatar. They could be looking at Nyquist as well, but based on what I was reading, it seems like Tatar is the more likely option that they're looking at there. So we'll see. Now back to Toronto for a quick moment here before we get into the three-way deal, is that they are supposedly interested in bulking up on their fourth line center position. I'm not sure they're completely sold on Dominic Moore being that guy, and they're looking to the Red Wings as well, and apparently they've shown a lot of interest in their center, Luke Glendening. Obviously, Glendening has a history with Babcock. We all know in Toronto, Babcock has a lot of influence on what the team does, and he certainly has his guys that he likes. And if you're a Babcock guy, then you have a chance to play in Toronto. As we've all seen, he's got his favorites, which is fine. He's got his way of liking to do things, and if Glendening is a guy that he really wants brought in, then they'll certainly try to accommodate that. Maybe they could look at moving like a Josh Levo. I think Detroit would be a good opportunity for Levo, where he needs playing time, and he's not getting it in Toronto. And with Detroit kind of looking to not really tear things down, but pretty close to a full rebuild here, I think there would be a good opportunity for him in Detroit, and then good opportunity for Glendenning, at least short term in Toronto. So it might be a good deal for both teams. So keep your eyes open for that. We got one last thing to discuss here quickly before we jump into the details on the three-way deal that we have been mentioned here, is the Pittsburgh Penguins are apparently heavily interested in a couple of guys, and a couple of these players are kind of a little bit newer to the Penguin radar, and that's being Michael Grabner and Derek Brassard. Now, apparently, it has been rumored that the Penguins were quite heavy on after Ottawa about Mike Hoffman, but the asking price was just way too high, so they backed off on that. But it looks as though obviously there's quite a difference between Grabner and Brassard. Very different players. One's a winger, one's a center. They probably could use an upgrade at either or. I think they probably could use a center more so than a winger myself, but I guess it's going to boil down to asking price. I know the asking price is quite high for Brassard, so that very well may deter them, but it seems as though they've been doing a lot of scouting of him and have been watching him quite closely. And same with Michael Grabner. I think Grabner could probably be had, I'm guessing probably a second round pick and a prospect would be my guess, so they wouldn't have to give up too much there. And Grabner comes at a fairly low price tag as well. So I could see the Grabner being an easy upgrade for the Penguins for the playoffs. I think Brassard's less likely, but it is a player they've been watching quite closely. So I'm sure the Penguins are going to make a move sometime between now and the deadline for at least one player. I'd be quite confident in saying that. They seem like they always do. Jimmy Rutherford's always in the mix to kind of bulk things up here for a third straight Stanley Cup. So we'll see what happens. But those are guys that apparently the Penguins are quite keen on right now. So I wouldn't rule them out of the Evander Kane mix either. But I've been hearing less and less about the Penguins and Kane, and seem like they've been going for more so less expensive options because the price on Kane, I think it's just out of reach for Penguins right now. If the price happens to come down closer to the deadline, they may jump back into that mix. But we'll see. Penguins are going to make a move of some sort, just a matter of who and when. So keep your eyes open for Penguins trades, probably coming up anytime between now and the deadline. So now here's the details that I come across on this potential three-team trade. Now, if there's any validity to this, if there's any truth to it at all, it certainly would be a huge trade. Like I said, the speculation that I came across was the Leafs, the Rangers, and a third team, and it was speculated the third team was Carolina. Now, of course, that would involve how it was structured was Rick Nash going to Carolina, Ryan McDonough going to Toronto, and obviously the Rangers getting a combination of players or picks from the Leafs and the Hurricanes. There was no exact mention of what was going back the other way to New York, but I can't imagine that it would be anything short of substantial. These guys both command high price tags, and certainly would be an interesting trade. I think there would have to be a variety of pieces. If you look at what the Colorado Avalanche got out of Matt Duchene in that three-team trade, and this here has two different players going to two different teams, the haul would have to be absolutely huge. Now, one good thing, the Carolina Hurricanes have a lot of prospects, especially on defense. So, I mean, I can't imagine they'd be giving up a top guy like a Jeff Skinner or anything like that. That kind of defeats the purpose of ownership trying to show them to send Skinner out for Nash. That wouldn't make sense. I'm sure Rangers fans would probably be okay with that. Skinner's a lot younger, and certainly a proven goal scorer would probably be a big help to the team. Just not sure that would be the way to go. But Jeff Skinner has been mentioned in trade rumors, so you never know. But if they're trying to really push to the fan base that they're trying to upgrade and win, I don't think now's the time to be moving Skinner out to bring Nash in. But we'll see. I mean, they have some really exciting young players in Carolina. So obviously there could be the Rangers getting a couple players from there. And as far as what would be coming back from Toronto, there was really no definitive names mentioned, but I can't imagine it would have to be something fairly substantial. We'd have to be talking about one of their young forwards that are quite strong. Maybe it's Kapanen. I can't imagine it being Nylander, but you never know, I guess. Anyways, there's real no definite need there. I mean, I can't imagine the Rangers are going to want anything that's not young, fast, and skilled. That seems to be their model right now. So, the Toronto has a lot of young players that kind of fit that mold. So do Carolina. So could there be something to it? Maybe. You never know. I guess we'll see. I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, a lot of these rumors, sometimes they never amounts to a lot. Sometimes they really do. But the thing that I like about it is it always involves a nice debate and discussion here on the channel, which is the whole point. And the reason I want to make these videos is to kind of discuss everything with you guys and see what everybody thinks. I mean, obviously rumors, sometimes they're just that. They're just rumors, but they're fun to talk about, and it's certainly fun to speculate, and it's nice to see all the different fan bases chime in on their opinions on what would help their team. So there's certainly something to think about there. I mean, so we could potentially see a three-team deal. I think it's probably highly unlikely that it goes down, but at this rate, with the Rangers looking pretty, sure thing that they want to kind of tear things down. And then you've got a team like Carolina, who I think is definitely going to want to add to try to make a push for the playoffs and kind of prove something to their fan base and to their team. I can see it being a possibility. Not sure Toronto is really the right fit there for the other side of the equation, but you never know. I mean, we have seen some McDonough Maple Leaf rumors before, but I know personally, I'm not to knock on McDonough. He's a great defenseman. Just not sure he's exactly what Toronto needs. But at the same time, you know, as good as he is, I think he would help just about any team he was traded to. So it's really hard to say. But give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think of this possible three-way deal? I think the return for the Rangers would have to be substantial. So I guess the fun part we can have with this here to speculate is if that three-way deal were to go down between the Leafs, Rangers, and Hurricanes, and the Rangers setting out two of their big names, what do you think the return would be? I know there's lots of Rangers fans that watch these videos. What would you want as a return? If you look at the Leafs and the Hurricanes and look at their younger players and their prospects, what would you want in return? So leave some comments and let me know your thoughts there, and we'll have lots of fun discussing that down in the comments. Don't forget as well to follow us on social media. You're going to see our Twitter handle on the screen right here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and all of those social media accounts are linked down below in the description, so certainly check those out. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.